Welcome. Tonight, we descend into the depths of the unknown. The air grows cold, the silence thickens, and what lurks in the darkness begins to stir. Listen closely as the veil between worlds thins. This is the tale of the lullaby in room 318. Let the darkness speak. The tires of your weary sedan crunched over the gravel drive of the Grandview Hotel. Fog, thick and cold as damp cotton wool, swallowed the headlights whole. The building loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette of faded Victorian grandeur. Paint peeled from ornate gingerbread trim like scabs, and several windows were boarded shut, giving it a lopsided, blind stare. A single flickering bulb above the heavy oak door offered a feeble welcome. Inside, the lobby was a cavernous tomb of dusty velvet drapes, threadbare Persian rugs, and the overwhelming scent of mildew and old cedar. Alone, ancient clerk sat behind a vast mahogany desk, his face pale and deeply lined under a green visor. His name tag read Mr. Finch. Checking in, Finch rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering on stone. He didn't look up from his ledger, his pen scratching relentlessly. "Yes, under Ellis," you replied, your own voice sounding too loud in the oppressive silence. The journey had been long, the coastal roads treacherous in the fog. All you craved was a hot bath and oblivion. Room 318, Finch stated flatly, sliding a heavy brass key across the desk. It felt unnaturally cold. Third floor. Elevators temperamental. Stairs are through the archway left. He finally glanced up, his eyes dark and unnervingly still. Quiet hours strictly observed. No disturbances. His gaze lingered a beat too long before dropping back to his ledger. The dismissal was absolute. The stairs groaned under your weight, each step echoing in the narrow, dimly lit stairwell. Faded floral wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing damp plaster beneath. The air grew colder as you ascended. Floor 3. The corridor stretched into gloom, lit only by widely spaced sconces with weak amber bulbs. Shadows pooled thickly between them. Your footsteps were muffled by a thin, worn carpet the color of dried blood. Room 318 was at the very end. The key turned with a heavy, protesting clunk. The door swung open silently on surprisingly well-oiled hinges. The room was large but felt cramped. High ceilings vanished into gloom. Heavy, dark velvet curtains covered a large window. A four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in thick, slightly moth-eaten burgundy damask. An ornate wardrobe stood sentinel in one corner. A claw-footed tub was visible through an open bathroom door, and a small writing desk sat under a tarnished mirror. The air was cold and still, smelling faintly of dust, lavender polish, and something else, something metallic and stale like old pennies. You dropped your bag with a sigh. The absolute silence pressed in. No hum of appliances, no distant traffic, not even the sound of the sea through the thick walls. Just nothing. Exhaustion pulled at you. You drew the heavy curtains, plunging the room into near darkness, illuminated only by the weak light from the bathroom you left ajar. The bed looked impossibly deep and inviting. You sank onto it, the old springs groaning like a tired beast. As your head hit the surprisingly soft pillow, a wave of heavy fatigue washed over you. Just sleep, you thought. Forget the strange clerk, the eerie silence, the cold, just sleep. Sleep descended swiftly, a dark, velvet wave pulling you under. It felt deep, almost unnaturally so, a complete absence of dreaming. Then, a sound pricked the surface of that perfect stillness. It wasn't loud, not at first. It was a vibration more than a noise, felt deep in your bones before it registered in your ears. A low, resonant hum. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The walls, the floor, the very air. It wasn't mechanical, not like a fridge or an air conditioner. It was organic, alive. A deep, sonorous thrumming that resonated in your chest cavity. Your eyes snapped open in the near darkness. You lay perfectly still, straining to listen. The hum persisted, steady and unchanging. It wasn't threatening, not yet. It was strange, unplaceable, You rationalized old pipes, the wind finding a gap in the clapboard, some forgotten boiler in the basement. Hotels had noises. This was just an unusual one. You shifted, tried to get comfortable again, burying your face deeper into the pillow. But the hum was there, insistent. It seemed to seep into your skull, a physical pressure behind your eyes. You turned onto your back, staring up into the darkness where the canopy of the four-poster vanished. Oh, it held a single, unwavering note. Then, almost imperceptibly, it began to shift. The pitch didn't change, but the tone deepened, acquiring a texture. It became less like a sound and more like a feeling of profound, ancient sadness, a loneliness that stretched across centuries. It vibrated through the mattress, up your spine. You shivered, pulling the heavy damask duvet tighter around your chin. The cold in the room seemed to intensify, seeping from the stone walls. What? The word escaped your lips as a breath, barely audible even to yourself. Why this sound? Why here? Why did it feel like it was burrowing into you? You closed your eyes tightly, focusing on your own breathing, in out and out, trying to create a counter rhythm to the relentless hum. It was difficult. The sound seemed to synchronize with your slowing heartbeat, threatening to pull it off its natural pace. You concentrated on the feel of the sheets, the weight of the blanket, the faint outline of the wardrobe in the gloom. Anything but the hum filling the room, filling your head. Time lost meaning. Minutes bled into what felt like hours, measured only by the unchanging, oppressive hum. It had become the soundtrack of the room, the fabric of the darkness. Just as you felt yourself teetering on the edge of sleep again, a new sensation prickled across your skin. Cold. Not just the ambient chill, but a distinct, localized cold spot forming near the foot of the bed. It was as if a pocket of Arctic air had manifested there. You instinctively curled your legs away from it, tucking them under the blanket. Then movement. A subtle shift in the deeper shadows near the wardrobe. Not a shape, exactly, but a deepening of the darkness, a coalescing of the gloom that seemed to absorb the weak light from the bathroom rather than reflect it. It was tall, impossibly tall, seeming to brush the high ceiling. It had no discernible features, just a sense of immense, patient stillness. It didn't approach. It simply was, your breath hitched in your throat. Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through the fatigue-induced haze. You squeezed your eyes shut. Not real, just shadows, hypnagogic imagery. Too tired. You chanted it internally like a desperate prayer. But the cold spot intensified, creeping slowly up the bed toward your legs. And the hum changed again. A new layer wove itself into the deep thrumming. A whisper, not words, not at first, just sibilant air like fabric dragging across stone or dry lips parting. It seemed to emanate from the dark shape near the wardrobe. Sleep. The whisper was faint, a breath against your ear, yet cut through the hum like a shard of ice. It wasn't menacing, it was pleading, desperately, achingly pleading. Sleep deep. It sent a jolt of pure, primal terror through you. This wasn't pipes. This wasn't wind. Something was in the room with you. Something that wanted you asleep. The implications were horrifying. Why? What happens when I sleep? You lay rigid, paralyzed by fear. Your heart hammered against your ribs, a frantic drum solo against the deep, mournful hum and the chilling whisper. You wanted to scream, to leap out of bed, to flee the room. But the cold spot had reached your knees now, a numbing, bone-deep chill. In the dark shape, it remained still, but its presence felt heavier, more focused, as if it were waiting for you to succumb. Yes. The whisper sighed, a sound like falling dust. Susanun, the whispered plea to sleep morphed. The sighing whispers began to weave themselves into the fabric of the deep hum. It started as disjointed fragments, sighs and whispers overlapping the drone. Then, slowly, agonizingly slowly, it resolved into a melody. It was a lullaby, but unlike any lullaby you'd ever heard. It was ancient, discordant, sung in a language that scraped against the mind, full of glottal stops and sibilant hisses. The deep hum formed the bass note, the foundation, while the whispers became the fractured, mournful voice singing above it. Huvum, shrera kithol, ena. The syllables felt wrong, unnatural, hurting your ears to comprehend. Ftain waiha sleesli, beneath the watchful stone. This phrase, shockingly clear and in accented English, cut through the gibberish, chilling you further. With a dreamless lie alone, the cold radiating from the foot of the bed intensified, spreading up your torso. It wasn't just cold, it was a draining cold, sapping your strength, your will to fight. The dark shape near the wardrobe seemed to pulse slightly with the rhythm of the lullaby. The air grew thick, heavy, harder to breathe. Every note of the discordant song vibrated in your teeth, in the marrow of your bones. It was an assault, a psychic battering ram against your consciousness. Panic surged, cutting through the lethargy induced by the cold. You had to move. You had to break free. With a monumental effort fueled by raw terror, you tried to sit up. Your muscles screamed in protest, leaden and unresponsive. It felt like pushing against deep, cold mud. You managed to lift your head a few inches off the pillow, gasping for air that felt thick as syrup. The lullaby faltered. The whispers hissed, sharp and angry. The dark shape near the wardrobe shifted. It didn't move closer, but its presence seemed to suddenly lean into the room, the pressure against your chest intensifying tenfold. The cold became piercing, stealing the breath from your lungs. No, the whispers shrieked, 1,000 dry voices scraping together. Not yet, not yet. Then, a new sound emerged beneath the lullaby and the whispers. A rhythmic, wet drip, drip, drip. It seemed to come from the bathroom. The image of the claw-footed tub flashed in your mind. Had you left the tap on? Impossible. You hadn't used it. The sound was slow, deliberate, like thick liquid falling on a tile. Drip. The lullaby pulsed. Drip. The cold intensified. Drip. The shadow leaned further. Drip. Your head sank back onto the pillow, utterly spent. The struggle was over. The lullaby swelled again, triumphant now, wrapping around you like a shroud. The whispers resumed their pleading, but edged with a terrible certainty. Yes. Count now. Count with us. Down to the deep. A compulsion seized you, irresistible as the tide. A number bloomed in your exhausted, terror-fogged mind. 10. The whispers sighed in unison. The dripping sound seemed to slow, matching the count. 10. The number echoed in your skull, resonating with the deep hum. The lullaby softened, becoming almost soothing in its terrible, discordant way. The pressure eased slightly, the crushing weight replaced by a leaden heaviness in your limbs. The cold remained a constant, numbing embrace. Good. The whispers sighed, a sound like settling dust. Niyin. 9. Your eyelids felt like stone slabs. The effort to keep them open was Herculean. The dark shape by the wardrobe blurred, becoming just a deeper patch of shadow in the room's gloom. The dripping sound slowed further, each drip marking the passage of an eon. Deeper, the whispers urged. 8. 8. Rational thought dissolved like smoke. The hotel room, the fear, your own identity, it all seemed distant, unimportant. Only the count mattered. Only the descent. The lullaby wove through your mind, its alien melody feeling strangely familiar now, inevitable. The cold wasn't painful anymore. It was just there. Like the air. Yes. 7. 7. The light from the bathroom seemed to dim, or perhaps your vision was failing. The edges of the room blurred into darkness. The only clear sensations were the deep vibration in your bones and the rhythmic, hypnotic countdown in your mind, echoed by the whispers and the drip. Almost. Home. 6. 6. A profound lethargy claimed you. Not sleepiness, but an utter cessation of will. Resistance was a forgotten concept. The dark shape was gone, or perhaps you could no longer perceive it. You were the cold. You were the hum. You were the count. Peace. 5. 5. The lullaby wasn't outside you anymore. It was you. You were humming it, a low, guttural vibration in your chest that matched the room's resonance. The whispers were your own thoughts, sighing the numbers. The dripping was your slowing heartbeat. No more like four. Darkness absolute. Not the darkness of the room, but an inner void. The sensations faded, the cold, the hum, even the count. Only a profound sense of sinking remained. Down in his soft, silent depths. Rest. Three. A final sigh, not from the whispers, but from deep within your own vanishing consciousness. A release. Two. Nothingness. Not peaceful, not terrifying, just absence. The deep. One. Silence. It wasn't just an absence of sound, it was an entity. The deep, resonant hum that had filled your bones, the air, the very walls of room 318, ceased as if a cosmic switch had been thrown. The chilling whispers pleading for sleep vanished mid-syllable, leaving an echoing void in their wake. The rhythmic, wet drip from the bathroom stopped abruptly, the final drop hanging suspended in the heavy air, never striking the tile. The crushing, bone-deep cold that had seeped into your limbs and core dissipated like smoke caught in a sudden draft. It left behind only the natural, slightly damp coolness of the old hotel room, a mundane sensation that felt alien after the supernatural chill. The immense pressure on your chest, the feeling of the dark presence leaning into the room, evaporated. The air felt thin, hollow. Moonlight, previously devoured by the thick fog, finally found a sliver of sky. A single, weak beam pierced through a gap in the heavy velvet curtains, slanting across the dusty floorboards and illuminating a constellation of dancing dust motes in the sudden stillness. It cast long, sharp shadows, but they were ordinary now. The shadow of the bedpost, the wardrobe's silhouette. The deepening shadow near the wardrobe, the coalescing gloom that had held the shape of something ancient and patient, was gone. Utterly. The corner was just a corner, dim and dusty. You lay perfectly still in the center of the vast four-poster bed. Your breathing was unnervingly slow, deep, and perfectly regular. In, out. No trace of the frantic gasps or hitched breaths from before remained. Your face, illuminated faintly by the moonlight, was smooth, utterly relaxed, devoid of any tension or the stark terror that had contorted it during the countdown. It was an empty piece, the piece of a deep, dreamless void. Your limbs lay heavy and inert, like marble sculptures arranged on the burgundy damask. The room itself felt evacuated, hollowed out. The oppressive atmosphere, the sense of a presence filling every molecule of space, had vanished. It was just a large, slightly shabby hotel room again, filled with the scent of dust and old lavender polish. The ornate wardrobe was just furniture. The claw-footed tub in the bathroom, glimpsed through the ajar door, was just porcelain, dry and silent. The writing desk, under the tarnished mirror, held only stillness. Outside, the fog still clung stubbornly to the cliffs, muffling the world. The Grandview Hotel stood sentinel, its boarded windows like closed eyes, its peeling paint stark in the moonlight. Within its walls, silence reigned. No groaning pipes, no settling timbers, no distant sea. Only the profound, absolute silence of a tomb. In room 318, only the dust motes moved, swirling lazily in the thin silver beam. They were the only sign of time passing in the perfect stillness. Deep beneath the surface of that profound, empty sleep, far below the level of dreams, deeper than subconscious thought, in a place of cold, primordial stillness, something vast and ancient shifted. A presence older than the hotel, older than the cliffs it clung to, felt a familiar satisfaction. The watchful stone beneath the foundations had accepted another offering. The deep, the endless, dreamless deep, held you now. You were not asleep. You were gone. Absorbed. Home. And the silence was absolute. One story ends, yet the tome of terrors remains open. Turn the page with me, into the pocket watch and the hollow chimes. The old coastal road clung to the cliffs like a frayed ribbon, battered by salt spray and howling wind. Your headlights carved weak tunnels through the thick, rolling fog that had swallowed the world hours ago. The directions led you here, Seaward Cottage. Aunt Alara's legacy, a place you'd only seen in faded photographs. A crumbling stone wall emerged from the gloom, choked by skeletal vines. The wrought iron gate hung crookedly, shrieking a rusty protest as you pushed it open. The cottage itself was a hunched silhouette against the churning darkness of the sea beyond, its windows like black, sightless eyes. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp stone, salt, and decades of undisturbed dust. Your footsteps echoed on cold flagstones. Cobwebs draped heavy furniture shrouded in ghostly sheets. A single oil lamp, left burning on a massive oak table, cast long, leaping shadows that made the walls seem to breathe. On the table, beside the lamp, lay a small velvet pouch and a brittle, yellowed envelope addressed in Aunt Alara's spidery script. For you, only open when alone. Seaward demands respect. Your fingers trembled slightly as you broke the wax seal. The letter was brief, stark. Dearest, Seaward guards its secrets. The cottage is yours, but heed its rhythm. This watch belonged to your grandfather. He understood the tides here. Winded at dusk. Listen, never fight the chimes. What sleeps beneath must not wake fully. Trust the watch. It will guide you into the quiet. With love and caution. Aunt Alara, you tipped the velvet pouch. A pocket watch slid into your palm, heavier than it looked. Cold, even through your skin. Solid silver, tarnished to a dull gray, etched with intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to shift under the lamplight. Patterns that hinted at leviathans sleeping in deep trenches and impossible angles beneath calm surfaces. A single, dark cabochon stone, like a drop of frozen midnight, was set into the crown. Hesitantly, you turned the tiny key. It resisted, then clicked with unnerving finality. A low, internal tick, tick, tick began impossibly loud in the silence, resonating in your bones. Exhaustion, amplified by the journey and the oppressive atmosphere, dragged at you. The only bedroom was small, dominated by a heavy, carved four-poster bed piled with quilts that smelled faintly of lavender and brine. You placed the watch on the nightstand. Its steady tick, tick, tick filled the small space, a metronome counting down the seconds. You burrowed under the quilts, the cold of the cottage seeping into your core despite their weight. The oil lamp from the main room cast a faint, flickering glow under the door. The tick, tick, tick was a lullaby of cold metal. Sleep came like a lead weight, deep dark. Then, beneath the rhythm of the watch, another sound emerged. Faint at first like seashells held to an ear, but growing clearer. Chimes. Not the bright tinkle of glass, but deep, sonorous, hollow tones, as if struck inside colossal, sunken bells. Boom, boom. They vibrated through the floorboards, through the bed frame, syncing with the watch's ticking. Tick, boom, tick, boom. Your eyes opened. The room was freezing. Frost feathered the inside of the window pane. The chimes weren't outside. They were below, deep below the cottage, resonating up through the stone foundations. The pocket watch glinted dully on the nightstand, its ticking now perfectly synchronized with the subterranean booms. Tick boom, tick boom, tick boom. A sense of immense, slumbering weight pressed up from below, responding to the watch's call. A new layer of sound wove into the rhythm. A whisper, dry as sand, trickling through ancient bones, seeming to come from the watch itself. See seaward sleeps. Tide turns. Listen deep. The cold intensified, biting into your flesh. You pulled the quilts tighter, but the chill came from within now, seeping from your marrow. The hollow chimes grew louder, more insistent. Boom, boom, boom. The floor vibrated. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. On the nightstand, the pocket watch's etched patterns seemed to writhe in the gloom, the leviathan shapes coiling. Then movement, not in the room, but in the corner of your vision where the lamplight under the door met the deep shadow. The darkness there thickened, congealed. It didn't form a shape, but it held a presence. Vast, patient, ancient. It felt anchored to the deep chimes, tethered to the watch. Watching, waiting. Panic fluttered in your chest. You wanted to grab the watch, stop its ticking, silence the dreadful chimes. But Aunt Ilara's warning echoed. Never fight the chimes. The whispering from the watch grew sharper, edged with a terrible need. Do not resist. The deep craves quiet. Win duon, win duon. The cold became a physical weight, pressing you into the mattress. The hollow boom, 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 vibrated your teeth. The dark presence in the corner pulsed with each chime, growing denser, hungrier. The pocket watch's ticking accelerated slightly, a frantic counterpoint. Tick-tick-boom, tick-tick-boom. You tried to move your arm towards the nightstand, a desperate urge to silence the artifact. Muscles screamed, locked in invisible ice. Only your eyes could move, darting between the writhing watch face and the deepening, pulsing shadow in the corner. The whispering became a chorus, layered, ancient. Too fast. Slow the beat. Kawunt. Kawunt the chimes. A compulsion colder and heavier than the chill in your bones seized you. A number, stark and undeniable, imprinted itself on your mind. 13. The whispers sighed, a sound like retreating waves over gravel. Yes. 13. To the stillness. Begin. 13. The number echoed with the next hollow boom. The frantic ticking of the watch slowed, deepening, merging seamlessly with the chime. The pressure eased infinitesimally, replaced by a leaden numbness spreading from your core. The pulsing shadow in the corner seemed to recede slightly, satisfied. Good. The whispers breathed. 12. 12. Your eyelids were slabs of granite. Frost crackled on your eyelashes. The chimes seemed to slow, each boom stretching into an eternity. The watch face swam in your vision. The etched leviathan seemed to swim through tarnished silver depths. Deeper. 11. 11. The cold wasn't pain anymore. It was emptiness. The room faded. The bed, the quilts, the nightstand dissolving into a gray haze. Only the deep boom, the slow, resonant tick, and the count remained. The whispers were your own thoughts now. Yes. 10. 10. Rationality was a distant shore. Aunt Ilara. The cottage, your own name. Meaningless flotsam swept away on a tide of numbing sound. You were the countdown. You were the hollow space inside the chime. Peace. 9. 9. The watch wasn't external. You felt its cold silver against your soul. It's ticking the slowing pulse in your veins. The deep boom was the beat of a vast, slumbering heart beneath the world. The whispering shadow was a part of the darkness behind your own eyes. No fear. 8. 8. Darkness, absolute and velvety, swallowed the gray haze. Sensation bled away, the cold, the vibration, the pressure. Only the count remained, a single point of fading consciousness in an infinite void. Rest. 7. 7. A final distant thought. What sleeps beneath? 6. 6. The question dissolved. Meaning dissolved. 5. 5. The last boom resonated, not through the cottage, but through the fabric of your being. 4. 4. The last tick, a final cold click. 3. 3. Silence began to pool. 2. 2. A sigh, not yours, but the sigh of the deep itself. 1. 1. Stillness. The hollow chimes ceased. The pocket watch's ticking stopped dead. The crushing cold vanished, leaving the ordinary chill of the unheated cottage. The oil lamp's flicker under the door was just light again. You lay utterly motionless. Breathing? Perhaps. Shallow, imperceptible. Your eyes were open, staring blankly at the darkened ceiling, reflecting nothing. Frost still coated the window, but it was just ice now. The pocket watch on the nightstand was inert, a cold lump of tarnished silver. The etched leviathans were frozen once more, mere decoration. The corner of the room was simply dark, but beneath the cottage, deep in the bedrock below the sea, something vast shifted contentedly in the absolute silence. The offering was accepted. The watch had wound down. Its rhythm, its life, had been absorbed into the stillness. Seaward slept, its hunger momentarily sated. The hollow chimes were silent. The watch was silent. And within the silent shell lying on the bed, where a mind had been, there was only the perfect, unthinking quiet of a wound-down mechanism. The pocket watch had guided you into the quiet, the deepest quiet of all, the end of the tome and the beginning of the end. No turning back. The clockwork stars of the silent observatory finds you. The train journey ended where the maps turned vague. A single platform, slick with rain and choked by weeds, marked the end of the line. The conductor's face was grim as he handed down your solitary suitcase. Observatory Hill, he muttered, avoiding your eyes. Last stop. Mind the quiet up there. Gets into you. The whistle shrieked, a sound swallowed instantly by the dripping pines and rolling fog as the train vanished into the gray. The path upwards was a scar through ancient forest. Moss swallowed crumbling stone steps. Roots bulged like petrified serpents. The air grew colder, thinner, tasting of wet earth and something metallic like old blood on the wind. Hours bled away under the dripping canopy. Just as dusk began to stain the fog purple, the trees fell back. It dominated the plateau, the Argus Point Observatory. Not a building, but a crumbling monument to forgotten ambition. Constructed of cyclopean, smoke-blackened stone, it rose in jagged tiers, part fortress, part temple, part machine. Towers bristled with rusted metal instruments, skeletal arms frozen in mid-reach towards the perpetually clouded sky. Massive gears, larger than wagons, lay half-sunk in the moss, teeth broken and weeping rust like tears. Shattered lenses, thick as portholes, littered the ground like monstrous blind eyes. The silence wasn't absence. It was a presence, thick as the fog, pressing against your eardrums. The only sound was the mournful drip of water from broken gutters. The heavy oak door, banded with corroded iron, stood slightly ajar. Inside, the grand atrium soared into gloom. Dust lay thick as snowfall, muffling your footsteps. The air hung frigid and stale, smelling of ozone, stone decay, and something else, something sharp and sterile, like formaldehyde mixed with starlight. Your lantern beam cut sways through the darkness, revealing colossal, shrouded shapes, dormant machinery, perhaps, or fossilized leviathans. On a central plinth of obsidian, clear of dust as if tended, lay a brass tube sealed with wax and a single sheet of vellum covered in tight, precise script. The handwriting belonged to your great-uncle Silas, the last curator, vanished decades ago. Nephew/niece. Argus Point sees what should not be seen. It heard the music. Now it sleeps, dreaming the silence. The key is the orrery. Find it in the chamber of celestial mechanics. Win the central pivot at the hour of deepest dark. Align the spheres as they were on the night of the fracture, coordinates enclosed. Listen, do not resist the alignment. The gears of heaven grind slow, and they hunger for resonance. Argus Point must not wake fully. The orrery will guide you into the perfect stillness between the stars. Trust the mechanism. Silas. The enclosed coordinates were a string of numbers and symbols that made your head ache. The brass tube contained a heavy, intricate key, cold as space itself. The trek deeper into the observatory was a descent into a mechanical necropolis. Corridors lined with silent, dust-shrouded consoles branched into cavernous halls dominated by Titanic. Frozen telescopes pointed uselessly at stone ceilings. Shadows clung thickly, seeming to move at the edge of your lantern's beam. The silence deepened, becoming a physical weight. You felt watched not by eyes, but by the building itself, by the dead instruments. The chamber of celestial mechanics took your breath away. It was a spherical vault, the domed ceiling lost in darkness. Dominating the center was the orrery. It wasn't a model. It was a universe in miniature, easily 20 feet across. Planets of polished obsidian, pitted moonstone, and veined jade hung, suspended on skeletal brass arms within complex, concentric rings representing orbits. Stars were chips of diamond and cold fire opal set into the rings. At its heart, a complex sphere of interlocked, faceted crystal pulsed with a faint, internal light, the central pivot. It hummed, a subsonic vibration felt in your molars. The hour of deepest dark found you standing before the orrery, Silas's coordinates clutched in your hand. The lantern light seemed feeble against the orrery's dormant grandeur. The silence was absolute, profound, a living thing. With trembling hands, you inserted the icy key into a hidden aperture on the central pivot. It turned with a series of deep, resonant clunks that echoed through the vault like the ceiling of a tomb. The crystal sphere flickered, then glowed with a steady, cold blue light. The subsonic hum intensified, vibrating the floor plates, one by one, guided by some unseen intelligence responding to the coordinates you mentally recited. The skeletal arms began to move. Not smoothly, but with jerking, groaning protests, as if waking from an aeon of sleep. Obsidian Mercury clicked into place. Clouded Venus shuddered on its axis. Earth, a blue-green sphere of cracked lapis lazuli, ground slowly into alignment. The sound was immense, the screech of unlubricated metal, the groan of stressed crystal, the deep, tectonic thud as each planet locked into its ordained position. Dust rained from the unseen ceiling. As Mars, a rusted iron orb, slotted into place, the sound changed. The mechanical groans deepened, harmonizing with the central pivot's hum, resolving into a single, overwhelming chord. It wasn't music, it was the shriek of celestial bodies forced into unnatural resonance. Iao. It vibrated your skull, rattled your teeth, pressed against your chest like a collapsing star. And then the whispers began, not from the shadows, but from the air itself, from the vibrating metal, from the stones of the chamber. They were layered, ancient, cold as the void. Argus Seus, the music broke, stillness craved, feed the sibilance. The temperature plummeted. Your breath plumed thickly, frosting the brass railing you gripped. The cold wasn't external. It emanated from the aligned orrery, a chilling radiation that seeped into your bones, leaching warmth and will. The central pivot glowed brighter, its cold blue light casting long, monstrous shadows that writhed across the vaulted walls. Within those coalescing shadows, things seemed to stir. Not shapes, but impressions of impossible angles and vast, patient intellects observing from the spaces between stars. The air crackled with static, raising the hairs on your arms. Jupiter, a banded sphere of amber and jet, lurched into final position with a sound like a mountain splitting. The chord deepened, became a physical force. It pressed you down. Your knees buckled. The whispers swelled, sharper now, edged with a terrible hunger. Resonance, synchrony, become the tuning fork, Kawant the alignment, a compulsion colder and more absolute than the freezing air, seize your mind. A number, vast and irrevocable as a galactic cycle, imprinted itself, 21. The whispers sighed through the shrieking chord, a sound like solar winds dying. Yes, 21. To the void, begin, 21. The number resonated with the next bone-jarring thud as Saturn's rings, tarnished silver and cracked ice, locked into place. The shrieking chord softened fractionally, weaving the count into its fabric. The crushing pressure eased a micron, replaced by a creeping numbness starting in your fingertips. The watching presences in the shadows pulsed with dark satisfaction. Good. The void voices breathed. 20. Your eyelids became sheets of lead. Frost crackled on your lips. The movement of the orrery seemed to slow, each grinding shift of Uranus, a sphere of milky, frozen quartz stretching into an aeon. The cold blue light of the central pivot blurred, becoming a nebula in your failing vision. Deeper into the dark. 19. Neptune, a sphere of deep, bruised sapphire, ground into position. Rationality fled. The observatory, Silas, your own heartbeat. insignificant static against the cosmic scream of the aligned spheres. You were the countdown. You were the dissonance resolving into the aura's terrible harmony. Yes. 18. 18. Pluto, a jagged shard of black diamond, clicked home. The cold was total now. Not pain, but utter nullification. The chamber dissolved in a swirling cosmic dust and fractured light. Only the shrieking chord, the deep thud of locking mechanisms echoing like dying stars, and the count remained. The whispers vibrated within your own frozen marrow. Peace in the stillness. 17. 17. The orrery wasn't before you anymore. You felt its colossal weight, its grinding gears within your own structure. The central pivot's hum was the fading pulse in your slowing blood. The shrieking chord was the sound of your own atoms straining against the unnatural alignment. The watchers in the void were the darkness behind your own eyes. No thought, only the machine. 16. 16. Darkness, absolute and infinite, swallowed the swirling chaos. Sensation bled away, the cold, the vibration, the pressure of the gaze. Only the count remained, a single, dying ember of awareness adrift in the interstellar void. Rest. 15. 15. The final planets, hypothetical spheres of dark matter represented by voids of purest black within the aura's structure, slid into their places. No sound, only a terrible, silent snap felt in the soul. 14. 14. The shrieking chord reached its zenith, a crescendo of tortured reality. 13. 13. Then it began to unravel, not fade, but fracture, each strand of dissonance snapping with a psychic crack that echoed through the void within you. 12. 12. The central pivot's light flickered wildly, casting strobing, monstrous shadows that danced with the dying screams of the music. 11. 11. The grinding movements ceased. The orrery hung perfectly aligned, humming with a terrible, silent power. 10. 10. The pressure vanished. The cold vanished. The whispers vanished. 9. 9. Only the count remained, echoing in perfect, empty silence. 8. 8. The central pivot's light dimmed to a single cold point. 7. 7. The vast, watching intellects withdrew, satisfied. 6. 6. Your final thought, the silence between the stars. 5. 5. The cold point of light winked out. 4. 4. The orrery stood inert, a perfect, frozen model of an unnatural sky. 3. 3. A sigh, not yours, but the sigh of the universe settling into perfect dead alignment. 2. 2. Emptiness, not peaceful, not terrifying, absolute. 1. 1. Stillness. The silence returned. Not the oppressive quiet of the observatory, but the true silence. The silence that existed before sound. The silence between heartbeats in the vacuum. The silence of perfect cosmic equilibrium. You stood before the orrery, or rather, a hollow shell stood. Motionless, breathless. Your eyes were open, fixed on the perfectly aligned spheres, reflecting nothing. No light, no thought, no fear. Just the dark, polished surfaces of the dead planets. Frost covered you like a second skin, glittering faintly in the residual starlight from the opals. The chamber of celestial mechanics was utterly silent. No gruan, no deep. The air hung perfectly still, devoid of even dust motes. The orrery itself seemed smaller, colder, its alignment now a monument to entropy rather than motion. The central pivot was a dead, dark crystal. High above, on the broken battlements of Argus Point, the perpetual fog thinned for a single, impossible moment. Through a rent in the clouds, true starlight pierced the darkness, cold, distant, and utterly indifferent. It illuminated the frozen figure before the orrery, a statue of flesh and frost, perfectly aligned with the machine's cold geometry. Deep within the observatory's foundations, in chambers lined with obsidian and inscribed with mad geometries, something vast and mechanical, the true engine of Argus Point, settled back into its slumber. Its hunger, The hunger for the resonant silence that followed the death scream of celestial music was sated. The orrery had performed its function. The tuning fork, the human mind, the human soul, had resonated perfectly and then ceased. The silence was complete. The silence was absolute. The silence was all that remained within the hollow shell and the frozen machine. Argus Point dreamed on, cradled in the perfect, unthinking stillness between the turning of the stars. The story has ended. Surrender to the stillness. The stars are silent. The machine sleeps. And so, the tome of terrors closes once more. But remember, its stories linger in the silence, in the creak of your floorboards, the shadow in your hall. Sleep with one eye open. Until next time.